Bonjour, everyone. Hi, this is Neshi Locatz. Welcome to Living in Two Worlds with your hosts, Carl and Ortrun Franklin, and myself, Neshi Locatz. And before we get started, before we bring Carl and Ortrun on, I just want to do a couple of different things. First of all, everybody, welcome. Thank you for being with us this evening, especially those in the live chat and those that are going to be watching this by the recorded show. Thank you so much for making time in your day to spend with us. We really do appreciate it. And I can't wait for this spiritual conversation about beyond the beyond and spiritual shift in consciousness, a shift in consciousness. So before we get started, though, I'm going to take my phone, right? And I'm going to share. We're trying to break a really long-standing habit in not using the word share. We're going to sprinkle or spread the live stream over to the news feed for me personally, and I would invite you to do the same thing. And here's the reason why. It's just that whenever we find a video, a post, an article, anything that helps us along our way with our spiritual growth, you know that someone else is looking for the same information. And so it's kind of like paying it forward, or I call it an energy worker's, the civic duty almost, because it's helpful. It's helpful to someone else. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing this show to either your personal newsfeed or maybe to a friend that you think that would really enjoy the show and the information, we really would appreciate it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring the co-host up here. And hey, Carl. Hey, Ortrun. How are you?
How are you? We're fine. Are you fine, Carol?
Yes. Cool, but fine.
Cool. Cool in so many different ways. There's two different meanings to that, Carl,
Right. Well,
So how about if we explain to our audience, where did you get the inspiration for our show tonight? Beyond the Beyond and Shift in Consciousness.
Well, things are changing so extremely fast.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to run just to try to keep up. And you can only keep up in limited areas, probably the ones that you're interested in. And for me, I'm the whole electronics technology area. I don't have, I'm way behind, and I have no desire to catch up with it. But yet it's the way things are going.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I know the feeling, and the catching up part, especially in technology. I do it because we have star nations, and I have to keep on top of those things. But I also have help. I have help with people that, like Stephanie and Julie, that really know their way in and out of certain areas with the technology, and that is so helpful. And so I'm not doing it all by myself, right? That back end of things. And so, but I also noticed, Orchun, that you did speak about this at the Coptic.
no, actually, Carl spoke about it.
Carl spoke.
At Unity
Oh,
Church.
okay.
Last Sunday, it was at Unity Center for Spiritual Growth.
Oh, I have my.
I had a week ago. I spoke at Coptics, and mine was a different title. It was on the
Okay.
spiritual fertilization, inundation of the Nile.
So, okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to open with, because I want to take the time while I share out the show, I was hoping that maybe you could give our audience a little bit more information about what does it mean to have a shift in consciousness.
it means to view the world differently, and to see and feel differently about yourself. Instead of having so much of your conscious awake time focused out there on the world in which you're living, there's been a shift where you're focusing more within yourself. And to do that, it is most helpful if you begin working out of your total brain, the conscious and the subconscious. We're only trained to work out of our conscious mind. That's all of the schools and religions and everyone that works with is that little 12 to 15% that's the conscious mind. They completely, totally ignore the subconscious. And we've known about the subconscious for 100 years.
At least.
Ever since Sigmund Freud.
Uh-huh.
And it just, here we've got this information growing so rapidly. But this part has been totally sidestepped and overlooked. And to go through life working out of 12 to 15% of your mental capacity when you could be working out of 100%, we would be even further along the path than we are right now. Now, just the thought that really hit me is back in the 1980s. For those of you that are old enough to remember the 80s, we were just floored when it was announced that they have found that knowledge is doubling every 7 to 8 years. That had never been done at any point in all of our recorded history, to have knowledge growing that fast. Well, just last month I read that now 2019 knowledge they estimate is doubling every 3 to 4 years. It's growing twice as fast on a base of knowledge that is probably 4 times greater than it was back in the 1980s. So if you feel inundated with change, with there's so much to learn, there's no way to learn it all, you're right. That's very true. We have to choose and select what is important to us. And something else that just that I have difficulty understanding the rationale behind. We've got 40 years of research on death and dying, and they found that the only part of us that really dies is our physical body. Our mind and our emotions and our soul are eternal. And yet in this world, our focus is so much on the outer, on how we look and what we have and the position that we have, the wealth that we have, the house we live in, etc. And we leave all those behind when we leave this physical body. And it seems like the focus should be on that part of us that is eternal. Because what we are doing in this lifetime is we're building on the foundation that is going to continue to be a part of our foundation from this moment on, literally forever. But yet here we focus on the things of the world, including our physical body, that when we leave the physical body are all left behind. Doesn't make any sense to me. So the shift in consciousness, working out of your whole mind instead of just the conscious mind, and looking at your priorities, what's really important? Is it the things that are temporal, which are the temporary things, or is it more important to develop yourself to be a person that you truly can look in the mirror and look in your eyes and say, I love you, I honor you, I trust you, I enjoy you. It's a pleasure to be with you, because that's the person you're stuck with, whether you're in your physical body or not. You can never escape living with yourself. So that's a quick summary of it. Anything else there, Neshi or Ortrun?
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, he said 100 years, that's this discovery. But truly, in the ancient mystery schools, they've known that for many, many, many thousands and thousands of years, probably. Who knows how far back it goes, and who knows how long mystery schools have been on the planet. We basically focus on ones, maybe 10,000 years, maybe 15,000 years. But there were others before that, I'm sure of it, that, were aware of these higher levels, of understanding and awareness. But it definitely does have to do with that connection of going within And starting to recognize that there is that connection between the right left brain, for instance, and trying to get the right left brain together so that it's functioning more in harmony, so that you can switch more easily back and forth. Because sometimes it is important for us to be able to be more into the left part of our brain so we can do, your analytical and mathematical types of functions. And other times, be a little bit more. Not that that's not creative, also, but to be on the right hemisphere. I mean, of the brain, so that we can have an experience more the creativity, and the creativity actually tends to tap us more into that subconscious mind that Carl was actually referring to. What I thought would be quite interesting for Carl, for you to talk a little about how you came across this to begin with, because he was a Lutheran minister for 13 years.
Yeah.
And you decided to go back for a psychology degree. So how did you happen to even come into this whole area of thinking beyond the 15% of your brain or your mind?
Seminary doesn't teach you how to deal with people, certainly not how to counsel. And to me, a good minister is one who has counseling skills. And so I went back to Western Michigan and got a master's in psychology. And one of the professors that I had, and this is the most important thing I learned in that whole degree program, was that the 85 to 90% of our mind is subconscious. And I made a resolution, a promise to myself in that class, in that session, that I'm going to do everything in my power to learn to use my total mind. And it wasn't 6 months later that a teacher came into my life. He was in his 70s. He had been a Jesuit monk most of his adult life. And for whatever reason, he left the Jesuit order and was now earning his livelihood as a teacher, but also as a hypnotist in surgical theaters, working with patients that, for whatever reason, could not take anesthetics. So he would hypnotize the patient down to a level where they would not feel the pain when the surgeon was working on them. And he was a lonely old man, never married and no children. And he came and lived with us for about 6 weeks and put on a number of different programs at our church and around the town of Jackson, Michigan. And I was at every one, and I got to be one of his best students. And he's the one that really taught me how. And I began meditating regularly. And as soon as I began meditating, I began channeling my sermons. I would have to spend 20 hours a week working on my Sunday talk, but now I was able to do it in less than 2 hours. Read the lessons for the day, go into meditation, and when I get immediately, I'd have the title, I turn on the dictaphone, dictate the sermon, and then read what the secretary had typed up 3 or 4 times, and then would stand free and give the talk. And the talks took on a lot more depth, a lot more meaning than what they had before. And I don't know, probably maybe a third of the congregation was growing spiritually with me, but 2/3 weren't. So that went on for about 2 years, and it was time to leave because they're just, So anyway, that's how I got my start in this whole thing. And to begin working out of your total mind and connecting with the spirit beings that are working with you, to go within and to be able to carry on a conversation with your own soul. Yeah. And the soul is the divine consciousness of the Creator within ourselves. All right. And it opens up. That's why living in two worlds, to live in the world of spirit and the physical world and draw the two together. You're creating something in the physical world that is beyond anything that it could be if you're not living in these two worlds, working on these two levels.
Right. Okay? Yeah. As you were sharing about your experience with the Jesuit monk, I was just thinking about it's very similar to when you train, or it's not even the right word. because I wouldn't say that my Misha, my grandfather trained me, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It was just listening to some of his stories and sitting quietly sometimes and not saying anything, and he would be saying, "Are you with me?" In other words, is your mind wandering? Kind of thing. And so I wouldn't call it training necessarily. I don't think that's the correct word, but it's the only one that comes to mind right now. Um, because there comes a point when you want to be comfortable in existing in both those worlds simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
right? That it does take a measure of self discipline,
Definitely.
right? Yeah, I think so. And I don't know, can you share a little bit about that? Because I know that some people in our audience, when we say, talk to your spiritual family, call on them, have a conversation with them, talk to your higher self, and
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the answer lies, right? And it's easy for us to say that because we've been doing this for a long time. But if somebody is just beginning, or they've finally made the decision, much like the way Carl did, is that made a promise to himself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
how do they begin? How do they begin?
Well, you begin by relaxing your body and quieting your mind.
Now you have a very quick
Well, yeah,
technique, and why don't you explain
okay.
some first and foremost about the conscious and the subconscious mind and the difference? Because that's the way, if we understand that, that makes it a little bit easier to go into that state, I believe.
Okay, the subconscious mind has four primary functions. Number one, it's aware of everything happening in our body at all times. And in the meditative state, you can talk to the organs and even the cells in your own body. It's a tremendous force for self healing. A second function, it's long term memory. When it goes into the subconscious, it is there. And it's not just there for this lifetime, it then gets transferred to your light body after you leave this physical body. So it becomes a part of you from that point on. And the third function, it is the creative part of the mind. And we know that because dreams are strictly coming from the subconscious. And they're often so creative that the conscious mind can't, with its logic, figure out what the dream means.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to interpret a dream, who do you want to ask? Not your conscious mind, but go into a relaxed state and ask your subconscious. That's where it came from. Okay. So you can interpret your own dreams more accurately than probably most other psychics and so on can interpret them for you. And the fourth function is the subconscious is, I'm going to call it the home of the divine within you. Um, the subconscious, I believe, is really deeply, well, the soul is deeply embedded in the subconscious, okay? And it's also deeply embedded in what we call our high heart. And the high heart would be, if you will, the heart of our soul. So those are the four functions. And right now, we're at about 22 brainwaves per second. And the subconscious does not begin to surface until you hit about 13. When you hit 13, the subconscious, and you hit that because you slowed the conscious mind down and relaxed your body. And as you continue to slow your mind even further and relax your body further, your brain waves slow down. And when you hit 7 brain waves, your conscious mind clicks off, you're asleep. But between 8 and 13 brain waves per second, you're functioning in what's called the alpha state. And that is a state you want to be in. In fact, you need to be in order to meditate. So in that state, you're working out of your conscious mind and the subconscious together, which means that you have conscious awareness of the messages that you are getting through the subconscious. And the spirit realm has great difficulty in trying to communicate with the conscious mind because it's so busy and it's focused on everything out there. Whereas the subconscious is focused not only out there, but also within here. So, as in the alpha state, they can communicate with us and we can communicate with them. And if you want help from the spirit realm, what you need to do is ask. They're not allowed to interfere. So, in the alpha state, if you ask, you're then also in a listening state and you can get the answer. If you pray, you're not in the alpha state. You're in the beta state, and if they answer it, it's the subconscious may pick it up, but you're consciously not aware of it. So, in the to pray in the alpha or in the beta state, it's a one-way conversation. You can communicate with them; they can't communicate with you. But in the meditative state or the alpha state, communication can be a dialogue. All right.
Uh-huh.
And Ortrun said the quick method to get there, the way you get there quickly is you bore the conscious mind. Uh, you know how it feels to be bored, all right? So what you do is you make your physical body comfortable and close your eyes. You're blocking out distractions with coming in through your eyes. And then you focus your mind and focus it on your breath. And begin counting as you're exhaling. Count your breaths, and with each breath, as you exhale it, you're releasing tension, cares, concern. Your mind is focused, and because it's focused, nothing can come in. So you've really created a barrier so that you're functioning only on one thing, your breath, counting. Okay. And with a little bit of practice, and I'm just talking a couple of weeks of practice, by the time you've exhaled that third breath, you're in the alpha state. You can do it in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And if you want to go yet deeper, continue counting until you reach the level that you want to attain, to do what you want to do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Carl actually has some CDs on that particular technique.
Yeah.
Years ago, he actually had, they were called hypnotherapy classes, and it was various topics. But that was one of the main things that he taught was that particular method. I have to say, with his voice, it's very, because it's very soothing. And when he guides you through that, it helps to really bring you down into that level, of tapping into that subconscious. But I think before anyone even taps into the subconscious, though, they have to realize that they probably have experience being in that level of awareness anyhow. It happens all the time. And I know many of you that are familiar with us hear us say, you experience that as you're going to sleep at night and as you're waking up in the morning. It's that in between state where you're in that level of being alert and then starting to drift down and go into this level where you're starting to just relax and let go. And it's almost like if you're looking at something or looking at the TV, your eyes just start to cross almost because you're so relaxed. You start becoming so relaxed and you're starting to even be maybe a little bit bored. That's when that communication takes place the easiest. And for me, that's why I say it's actually, I see it as being a part of my life. It is life. Meditation is a way of life because if you can be down where you're just at that 17%, like Carl says, of the brainwave factor, you're tapping in, and it's like you're always connected. It's when that the right brain, left brain have come together and things are just flowing a little bit easier in between them. And so then you can start, if you're saying mantras, which is a way that many people start,
Yeah.
is by
Yeah.
utilizing mantras.
Repetition.
And repetition, right? Because that bores the mind. But, so whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in your life, and usually you just start with a word, maybe love or peace or joy, something of that nature, because you can repeat that over and over and over again, and that will bore the mind and start helping you to go into that space of being much more relaxed. Now, that repetition, if you're doing that always in the beta state, your subconscious mind is only hearing it once each time you say that. But when you start drifting, when you get to that space where you're drifting somewhat, then when you repeat that mantra, it's actually is more powerful, maybe 100 to 200 times is more powerful, as if you were saying it in the beta
That's
state.
right.
So your subconscious starts to pick up what it is that you desire. And that's how you can start creating, what it is that you desire in your life.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, start with one word,
Mhm.
at a time. And that's a good way to begin that. But you can have longer mantras also
Yeah.
as you go on.
Yeah, Ortrun said love and so on, and I would say, I would put the preface, I am.
I am is a good
I
way of
am
saying
love.
it.
I am peace. I am joy.
I
Yeah.
am that I am. That's always a really a
Yeah.
good one, because
Yeah.
that connects us with that divine essence within. So that's one of the ways to start that. The other is that
Well, can I just interject just one thing here? Okay, is this because I want everybody to really hear or get what Ortrun just said, because that was a huge gold nugget there. Is that is just to choose a simple phrase that's meaningful to you and what you want to intend, and you keep saying it. And when you get to the alpha, did you hear what she said? It's 200 times, at least 200 times more powerful than if you would do it from your conscious state,
Mhm.
right? And so I think that that's a huge gold nugget there, because I think, and what I felt was like people were connecting dots there. It's like, oh my gosh, that is a very important piece.
Actually, let's turn that nugget into a gigantic rock. All right,
Okay.
get a group of people to
Yeah.
meditate on the same thing at the same time,
Right.
and the energy increases on a quantum level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a matter; it doesn't double, but you can, if you've got 10 people, that would have the power
It's exponential.
of 200
Yeah.
times, each one having the power of 200 visits.
Right.
That's 40,000.
Holy smokes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's why group meditation is so much more effective, or that's
Yeah.
why people can come into a group and sit in meditation and feel, oh my goodness, I just, this is wonderful. I felt like I was off somewhere, or possibly you can't do that by yourself. So in order to get to that beyond the beyond, focus is extremely important. And as you mentioned earlier, discipline is important, because it's something that you really want to do. And I have to say, probably most people aren't going to be disciplined unless they've had a reason to be disciplined.
Yeah.
It's something that probably has occurred in their life that has maybe caused them some trauma, or but most people, if everything seems to be going just fine, aren't really the seekers. They're
Right.
the ones that are out there, and they're okay. They're going to do what they want to do, and they're fine with it. But there's usually something within your heart, or it could be because it was brought on by a tragedy, or some kind of a challenge. But or there might be this real longing. There's just a longing that I want to be more than what I am. So, and the thing is, just me even saying that I want to be more than I am.
Mhm.
That particular phrase in itself, when you say I am, whatever you're saying, make sure it's positive.
Right.
Yes.
Because if you're not using a positive word, you're giving yourself the phrase and that particular message that you not that. And then, so you always want to say everything in a positive format,
Right.
because the subconscious mind doesn't really hear the no's to begin with, or
Right.
the nots.
Right.
So when you're saying something, your subconscious mind, and if you're doing a mantra or a few words, and put a few words together, make certain what it is that you're building is something you're saying in a positive manner,
Mhm.
and leave that whole no and not, and so leave those out of the equation, because the message is, it gets mixed up. Your conscious gets mixed up, and it really doesn't even hear that particular word, those words.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm wondering, are there any comments or any questions that?
Not so far. Not so
Okay.
far. No.
Well, let's invite them to post those. Okay,
Okay.
comments and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I can send them a little note too. Um, Orchard, what popped into my mind when you said that is that years ago, when I was doing training, right, for Awakening Illuminated Heart, one of the things that we talked about was energy medicine, right?
Mhm.
And coming out of China, there was a group of doctors who they would go before they would go into. They wasn't even really surgery. Um, they would go into meditation together, right?
That's wonderful.
Around their patient, okay, the health and well being of their patient,
Mhm.
and they would go into the surgical area. They weren't performing surgery though, and what they did is they literally used only one hand, sending unconditional love to this patient, right, and repeating, "She is whole, she is healthy," using her name, right, and they would work together on that.
That's
And one of
wonderful.
the things that they showed in I think it was a sonogram. Anyway, the tumor was literally shrinking in size,
Mhm.
and they never cut her open. They didn't do anything very invasive. What they did was they used unconditional love,
Mhm.
and with them at the alpha state, repeating over and over that she was whole, she was healthy.
That's a beautiful. It's beautiful. It's just totally
Right,
amazing.
right. So taking what you both said and combining it, because I think there was, if I remember right, there was four surgeons who went in, and the nursing staff, the support staff, was also included in it. And so she was literally surrounded by people who were giving her unconditional love and
It,
Now,
repeating
I
it.
Go ahead, Carl.
I would like to explain why and how that works, if I might.
Sure,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
Physics has told us for decades that everything in the universe is made out of energy. And now, in the last 10 or so years, the quantum physicists have been telling us that basically everything in the universe has consciousness. And they were experimenting or working with photons, which are a subatomic particle. It's light in a particle form. All
Mhm.
right. And the photons that they worked with had consciousness. They were aware of their environment. They were aware of themselves. They were aware of their options. They made decisions. They acted on those decisions. And in fact, they even knew what the scientists were thinking.
Mhm.
Okay, so what these Chinese doctors were doing is they were changing the energy in that patient's body, particularly the energy of that tumor, and withdrawing the energy from it that allowed it to exist. And as they visualized that, it was happening.
Mhm.
That is how it works, and that's how Jesus did his miracles.
No,
And
isn't
he
that
said, "Hey,
cool?
everything I did, you can do, and even greater."
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah,
I believe that.
yeah.
Mhm.
I do
Well,
too. I do too. Wow.
I do too. I wanted to also, because I know that we did a show with you just recently, a mini show on meditation, or
Hmm. Hmm.
so we're talking really about things that you start with right now. That's what we seem to be speaking with. Seems to be coming forth.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I wanted to mention was that when when we were in church, we would pray, and we would hold our hands, like this in prayer, however you held it. And you always had it here, and you were looking down. So you were always looking downward. And the more that you start to recognize that, you start bringing those hands up and those arms up, and all of a sudden you're spreading them apart, you're actually showing the divine that you want this energy to be showered in. Because what you're doing is, when you're praying, you're not really holding your hand on your heart to begin with. You're holding it more in the solar plexus area.
Yeah.
But when you start focusing more on meditation, you can do it by just lifting up your hand, and it forms into a pyramid,
Hmm.
and the pyramid of
The
light. That's
tetrahedral.
something that's a symbol that then energies can actually flow through,
Mhm.
and they will, because you're tapping into the universe, and it will flow into that. But then as you keep going up, then you spread your arms out and you're becoming open. You're opening yourself up to really receiving.
Right.
That's one of the things I want to mention. The other thing is that we have the third eye area. And when we're looking to the outer, we're always using both of our eyes. But when we start to also bring our hands up, we tend to bring our eyes up also.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you bring your eyes up, you're focusing onto that third eye. And it's an automatic thing.
Yeah.
So that you're bringing that up. And now you're joining those two, your right and left eye, and you're joining it and you're blending those two together. So then you've got that third eye that you're focusing on. So again, that energy can flow more into that. You're focusing and to bring it into that space.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that and these are little practices, small things, but they're very, very important, especially for someone that's starting anew with this.
Right, right. And I know that we've had some people join us just recently, and so I just want to let those who just joined us what we're talking about. The title of the show is Beyond the Beyond, a shift in consciousness. And the shift in consciousness is about utilizing our subconscious mind and that shift to be able to use our entire mind in the balance, right? And so I had asked both Ortrun and Carl if they could give us some insight, some tips too, for those of us who might just be either starting out or we just made that commitment to ourselves that we were going to learn how to maximize our energies and using our tapping into our subconscious mind more often. And so that's what we're talking about right now. Some of it was about the meditation, and this last piece that Ortrun offered was an open circuit to receive, and also to bring together both your outer vision and your inner vision together. And basically, that's what she was talking about is looking. It's kind of almost like you're almost crossing your eyes because you're looking up with your physical eyes to your third eye. And, for those that are watching right now, just try it right now. It doesn't take much. Just try to see what it feels like. And you can even do it with your eyes closed, your physical eyes closed. Yeah.
Just a couple other little things that I'd like to share. I spoke earlier on about, we have the two hemispheres. And most of the time, we're stuck in one or the other. We can be very much stuck in the left brain, like I said, the analytical, or we can be stuck in the right brain. And I tended to experience that when I was, younger. And we would, I was a systems analyst, a computer person. So at work, I always had to be left brained because that was the focus. But then on the weekends, I'd really move into that right brain because it was just more fun for me. It was just much more relaxing for me. So when I would drive into work, I'd have to focus on trying to blend those two together because what I mentioned to you earlier, Nishi, was that we really want both those to work easily together so we can move back and forth when we need to. Mm-hmm. And so there are little exercises that you can do for that. And one of them is if you're stuck in the right brain, because the right brain is actually more of a creative and it's where you would do your singing and those happy things. So when I was driving to work, I would tap on my left side of the brain, the left part of my head, and I would sing a song.
Which is a right brain
function. Mm-hmm. And so that would shift it. And you could tell when you were in that space of where it was balanced.
Oh.
We've got a storm going on here. I don't know if you saw that flickering, but
yeah. So is that thunder? We're hearing thunder.
Thunder and lightning. So that's why the lights are flashing. Okay. So, but if you do that function, the right brain function, and you're tapping on the left side, and I'm not just saying, just tap a little bit harder so you can sort of wake up that part of your brain and sing a little song. Even if it's like Mary Had a Little Lamb, however. Yeah. So that will help to balance that so that the two are functioning better together. It'll bring it into the center. and vice versa. If you want to go into the creative part of your brain now, which many times, people in our society very much are in that
right.
using the left part of their brain. You tap the right side of your head and you say the multiplication tables. Like 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and you tap. You're tapping while you're saying that.
Mhm.
Because that's activating and bringing do it because you're already in that space where you're doing an analytical type of a thing, but because you're tapping the right side, it'll bring it into the creative and balance it out.
And balance it out.
hmm hmm
All
And it
right.
works. I'll tell you, it worked. I had to do that after every weekend when I was driving into work. I'm tapping away.
Well, I'm gonna ask our audience that, are you willing to try the tapping to balance out the left and right hemisphere of your brain? Because most of us probably have never even tried that.
No, no, and I don't even know. It was something I learned on my journey. Somehow I came across that, and
Yeah.
it really worked for me. So try it sometime. See if it doesn't make you feel a little bit better. If you feel like you're stuck, you can't get your checkbook right. Can't work with the checkbook. Uh, say the multiplication table.
Writer's block.
Yes, writer's block. There you go. Yes, exactly, exactly. And I haven't really used it for that, I have to say, but thank you for reminding me.
Actually, when I wrote my book, and I did it on using the Dragon computer program because I'm a talker, I'm not a writer.
Mhm.
And the last chapter, I hadn't even planned it. I was told to put that chapter in,
Yeah,
and the whole last chapter dealing with the Davis, it's channeled.
yeah.
I was in the meditative state,
Mhm.
the alpha state throughout the whole thing, and it ended up being the longest chapter in the book. So, and I learned because most of that information I did not have in my conscious mind when I wrote
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a great chapter. It's a great chapter. Here, Rochelle says, I'm going to do this, the tapping.
Good, do it. Truly, it's
that.
effective. It truly
Yeah.
is. So,
Yeah. And so what we're doing right now is we're trying to help those that are maybe just starting out consciously on their journey, or those of us that have been around for a while, but we finally made the commitment to our spiritual studies and our spiritual growth, to be able to access more parts of our subconscious mind and to have a balance. And really that is the shift in consciousness. That is
yes,
the shift. And so yeah, okay, here's one.
okay.
Going back to my studies with Awakening Illuminated Heart, there's one part in there that when we were learning how to balance, right, and to go into the heart, we were talking about the fall, the Atlantis, and the Great Fall.
hmm
The fall in consciousness, and many think that when you're falling, you're actually going from the top to the bottom. But this is actually the reverse. We went from living more in our hearts and utilizing more of our brain, right? Both hemispheres.
hmm
In that fall, we literally went mostly to our brain and mostly to the left side of the brain.
hmm
And so when they're talking about the fall, they're talking about the fall of humanity, yes, but it really is going the opposite direction. We went from being in our hearts and going into the left brain, functioning more from there, and literally setting us back in our evolution, our quite a long ways back. And so here we are over how many thousands of years later, and look where we're sitting now and what we're talking about.
Well, for me, when you're talking about that, what it makes me realize or think about more so is we talk about the heart, we talk about the mind, but I think what happened is you went from the heart and you went into the brain. You
Yes.
went into 15%, and
Yes.
that was the fall because you
Yes.
fell back. Or before that, if you have you're functioning through your entire
Right.
mind,
Right.
that's divine mind. Then that's
Right.
the that's where you're tapping into that super conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, the fall is going back to 15%.
Because there was movement to it. There was movement.
Well, I would, I would think there would always be movement because
Right.
there's always that vibratory,
Correct.
frequency movement anyhow. So there'd
Yeah.
be a shift as
Yeah.
to where it is that you would experience
Mm-hmm.
that happening.
Right.
So it's just very fascinating the way that
It
our
really is.
mind and brain and all that works.
Yeah, Neshy, I want to look at the big picture for just a minute here, if
Sure.
I can.
Love that.
We're aware that we go through cycles, and we know that there's a 26,000 year cycle, and we know that there's a 12,000. I'm sorry, a 13.
13.
26,000 year cycle,
Yeah.
and the zodiac covers one trip around the zodiac is 26,000 years. And the 12 different signs of the zodiac represent 12 different fields of energy. And right now, we're a little more than halfway into the Aquarian energy and leaving the Piscean energy. And we're going from a lower frequency field into a higher frequency field. And we'll be in this higher frequency field for about 2,600 years.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, 2,300 years, I think it is. And at some point, we're going to go into some lower fields of energy, way down the road. And that's what happened 26,000 years ago,
Mhm.
is we dropped from a high, these fields of energy are in space, and we go through them, the 12 different fields, each 26,000 years. And the creation is designed in such a manner that it's not a straight line. It's not just always going uphill or always going downhill. It's more like, driving through the mountains, and you go up and you go down, and that way you have a wider range of experiences and you learn more. But the trend now, the cycle that we're in now, is going to be a higher cycle than the last 26,000 year cycle. Okay, so gradually we're moving higher and higher. And if you go back through, they figure that humanity's been on the earth between 1 and 2 million years. Well, we've progressed to this point. This is not the highest point we've ever been at. We were higher in Lemuria, and Atlantis was at a lower level than Lemuria was. And now we're going to attain, I believe, about the same level that they had in Lemuria. And the technical phase we're going through is representative of going through the Atlantean phase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we're going to go into the spiritual phase, and at that point, we will have reestablished contact with our brothers and sisters in space who are functioning at a much higher level of consciousness than we are. And we're going to be forming, I believe, partnerships with them. And we are literally going to be recreating the surface of the earth at a more pure, higher level. And that is harmful and negative will not be able to exist here. And our generation, we're the ones that are helping to lay the foundation on which that is happening. And so I can't stress the importance of that we're here at just an extraordinary time of history to play an extraordinarily powerful and important role. And that is to rise above the negative third dimensional, to get out of the logical mind and move beyond that, and to create the foundation for what it is we want our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren to experience.
Mm-hmm. I agree. One of the things about being here at this time, right, is that because every single one of us chose, at a soul level, we chose to be here right now and where we're at in this present moment, right? We had already chosen that. And so many of us came to be here at this time because we were at Atlantis. We were there at or during the Great Fall. And so we're back here again to make a different decision.
Yes.
And in that decision, it can be as, I'm going to say simple, as making the decision to be more in your subconscious mind than you ever have in the past or the present, so that you have more balance between your conscious and subconscious mind. That's the shift in consciousness, right? And so when we make that decision, there's parts of our life that changes. And that's where the self-discipline thing comes in, right? Is really taking the time, taking the time to do the meditations, right? And so it seems to be a simple decision to make, but it has a huge impact on all of the entire universe, really.
Yeah, it does.
But I tend to think that what's going to happen is that all those he's talking about, the Atlantean was very similar to, let's compare it to the technological age.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the Lemuria was more the spiritual. See, I think now it's time for those two to blend together.
Yeah.
So that all of it is at a higher awareness and consciousness.
Mm-hmm. That
So,
it's a balance.
and
Yeah.
the balance, right? And what Carl was talking about each time, where it's not up and down, but we are always spiraling upward.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that's the thing, and there's going to be that point in time where the two are going to be in balance, and that's my dream, of course, is that it will be that balance.
Mhm.
Well, see, I want to challenge that a little bit,
ahead.
if I might. I think that when we reach the level that the Lemurians were at and higher, we really won't need the technology, because with our mind, we'll be able to create and call into form energy so that we have what we want. Technology will be beyond technology, literally. And I'm looking forward to that. And Jesus showed us that, you don't have to plant food to have food. You can multiply what is. And you don't have to take the medicines to be healed. You can, and the same thing Neshi was saying about these doctors in China. You can change the energy that is the illness and be healed. So that doesn't involve technology at all, but it involves literally walking in two worlds, walking hand in hand with the spirit world, and walking with. And to do that, you have to be at a higher level of consciousness where you're consciously aware of their presence and their abilities, and you ask for what you want, and your physical body becomes the channel through which that energy flows to bring about what it is you want. Okay? And right now, we are here to create this spiritual balance so that, well, the knowledge that we've been gaining, that's growing so fast. If you look at religion is the same place it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, back to the Reformation. And I was that Lutheran minister, and I couldn't go beyond Martin Luther. When I did, I had to leave. And all religions have a ceiling. You can't go beyond the founder of that religion. So technology doesn't have that ceiling. They can go as far as they can go, and all of science can. But religion can't. So we're out of balance. And we need to go now beyond religion. We need to go into spirituality, which means living out of the conscious and subconscious, connecting with our soul, connecting with our spirit family, and learning to do what Jesus said we could do, which is everything he did and even more. Okay, and when we reach that, technology will not be essential for us.
But when do you think that's going to actually happen? I mean, we can talk about these things,
on an individual basis, it's happening now with some people, like those Chinese doctors.
Mm-hmm. Right.
back in like some of the things we've experienced too.
Right, but we're not there 100%.
No.
So when you're speaking like that, it sounds like it's 100%.
No.
That's what. And what do you think as far as when will it be 100%?
I think that we're each going to develop spiritually along certain lines and develop certain abilities that go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get together and share our abilities, we'll be able to provide most of what we need.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think that's happening now.
yeah, I think that it's happening in pockets of time.
Yeah.
Because it's like shows like this, it's like organizations like Star Nations, it's places like that where people gather and we have conversations and we learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, this is coming from science, that tipping balance, right? When you get to the 100th monkey,
Yes.
Yeah.
that's when it's going to change. And we already have reached that in different, I think, different phases of our
Yes.
spiritual growth, right? I mean, there was a time when you couldn't even talk about religion without somebody getting angry, right? And there's pockets now where we're much more open to each other's beliefs. Doesn't mean that we're going to change our own belief, but we're open to it, to listen, right? And I think it's happening. It's happening maybe in smaller pockets more than it ever has in the past, right?
Definitely. I remember when Carl and I first started in metaphysics, we started a little separately, but once we became a couple, it was a closet word. Spiritual metaphysics was a closet thing. You didn't talk about this. And I remember where we in our home here in Grand Rapids, there are teachers that lived behind us. So our children went to the school. All these teachers were at. And they would say to them, "What you got going on over there, cult?"
No, we had a class every Wednesday.
Week we would have a class.
Up to 40 people there every Wednesday.
Right. And they would say to them, "What you got going on there, cult?" And it affected my daughter, a little bit more skeptically, I'm going to say. And so but my boys, they said, "Sure, right," and they move on. But she had a little bit more of a challenge with that.
Mhm.
But so most people didn't speak about it openly. But now, the words are a little different, meditation, and then we talk about mindfulness. Mindfulness is not deep meditation, certainly, but it certainly is helping you to start focus within.
Mhm.
It's that looking at more at the outer and being at one with it. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing because we're seeing that occurring with many, many people, and that's in the business world, in many places. It's
Right.
not just people that of religion, but I do also think and believe that it's always there. It's always there, and even in some of the traditional religions, because I know in Catholicism that the inner teachings are there.
Mhm.
You're not the one that's out here in the front speaking to the masses, but if you are studying, maybe as a Benedictine monk,
Mhm.
you are getting some of these truths. As a matter of fact, we were speaking to a friend of ours who was a Benedictine,
Mhm.
and he was telling us that they were listening to someone give a presentation on something, and the head monk, he all of a sudden he banged on the table. "We know those things here, but we don't talk about them because those were not to be meant to be shared with anyone else." Well, now the time has come where many things are to be shared, more so with the outer than what it was before. It just is time. But there are many that won't have anything to do with it yet either. They don't want to share anything with the outer.
Yeah.
Nessie, we're down to 1 minute. What do you
I
want to say?
know. And we're just getting started on the juicy stuff.
Just stuff, right?
If you guys don't mind, would you mind picking this up again next month so that we can
Sure.
get a little bit deeper into it? Would that be all right with you?
That'd be great. Sure. I think we can do that, right, Carl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. All right.
Beyond.
Beyond
Beyond Nanda.
and
Yeah,
back home again, right?
there
Um,
you go.
and so that's actually a pretty good title. So, in the last, well, we're at the top of the hour. What do you have any closing comments for our audience?
Be still and know that you are God.
Mhm. I love it. I think that's really beautiful.
Mhm,
And yes, and use some of those affirmations.
mhm,
I am that I am. I am light. I am love. I am peace. I am joy. Strength, whatever it is that you feel that you need to be more balanced in within your heart and mind. Bring those mantras into your consciousness and recognize that every time you say, I am, you are creating that particular thing, whatever it is
Yeah.
that you say after the I am. And that's such an important part of the growing into awareness, higher levels of consciousness.
mhm. Yeah. You know what? My 2 cents at the very end here um, is to know that you are exactly where you are supposed to be right
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Exactly. And so
I love
when you get the nudge from your spiritual team, when you get that feeling of, gee, I should probably meditate, or I want to meditate, or I want to do this differently. Listen to that voice. Listen to that part of yourself that is literally taking your hand and saying, "Come over to this side for a little while." Right? And so we're exactly where we're meant to be and doing what we're doing right now because it's already in your soul contract. You're here for a
Right.
purpose.
That's right.
You're already doing it. And I love the I that on the I am statements. Those are very powerful statements. So with that, thank you so much for being with us this evening for Living in Two Worlds. We'll pick this back up next month at the last Thursday of September. Can you believe that? The last Thursday of September for Living in Two Worlds at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And actually, just if I can plant a thought here,
Sure.
come up with questions, come up with comments for
Yes.
us for next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we'll work on that.
No, I don't mean you.
I'll
I
go
mean
over
the
to the
listener.
I'll go over to the closed group for the live stream shows, and we'll get some questions going
Good.
for our next show. Okay.
Good.
Okay,
Good.
All
sounds
right.
great.
All right.
Love you all. Enjoy the holiday, the Labor Day weekend here.
Yes.
That's
Thank
right.
you so much for tuning in. We do. We love you.
Hmm.
Feel our love coming your way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, everyone, please enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you back here for Living in Two Worlds the last Thursday in September at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Right.
Oops. All right. We got to get this done.